Not so tough now.
With the recent announcement, I've decided to do a Devil May Cry review, but not of the original saga. I've decided to look into the reboot and find out for myself why they aren't carrying on with that story, as this will be the first time I'm playing the reboot. The Devil May Cry reboot, which for some reason is called DmC Devil May Cry, is for the most part a game I've tried to avoid. But it's been 5 years, I'm over my "that's not Dante, meh" phase. Instead, I'm willing to give it a chance thanks to the Steam sale. Mwah. Thank you, Steam. Let's start off with the story. You know that renowned story of Devil May Cry? Yeah. But in all seriousness, the story starts off with the introduction to both the game's antagonist, Mundus, and protagonist, Dante. Not really the best way to introduce Dante, if I'm honest, because it starts off with him being in a strip club, drinking, and taking a couple strippers back to his trailer to have fully clothed sex with them. The fuck? Fast forward a bit, and the next day, Dante is told by some random girl he's never met that he's been reckless and Mundus has sent his hunter demons to track down and kill or capture him. It's kind of unclear, because he's trying to kill you, but at the same time he's trying to capture you. I don't know what's going on. Fast forward a bit more, and Dante finds out Mundus killed his mother and father, and is out for revenge and dethrone Mundus. It's around this point where I sort of like stopped caring about the story, because honestly, it is so uninspired. Now, the problem isn't that it's uninspired, it's the execution and general writing of the characters that bothers me. Dante doesn't come off as this cool guy with one-liners that makes his enemies smirk. Instead, he has lines that come off childish and remind you of when you were in your rebellious teen years. Nobody wants a reminder of that. Also, what the fuck did they do to Virgil? It's like they took a basic look at the Virgil we were presented to in DmC 1 and 3 and said, right, he's got a katana, a blue long coat, and fights like a G. Completely forgetting Virgil's sense of honor. There's a scene that pissed me off in the game which goes against what Virgil is in previous DmC games. He is a literal womb slayer. Anyway, I think it's time I started talking about the gameplay, because if I keep thinking about the differences between the reboots and older games, I swear I developed some disease. Let's start with the combat. It's good. It's not as good as DmC 3, which in truth is where DmC in terms of gameplay and story peaked, but still good. Dante still has his Rebellion, as well as Ebony and Ivory to start off with. The combos are fairly basic as well with Rebellion, for the most part just being the usual attack button 4 times in a row. I won't be talking about the guns because, honestly, they don't do enough damage to warrant me talking about them, and also the style meter barely goes up when you use your guns. Instead of the traditional devil arms, Dante has 2 angel and 2 demon weapons he can switch to on the fly. This is where you'll be able to pull off those crazy combos that give you the triple S rank in combat, or so I thought. It's actually easier in the reboot to get the triple S rank with just Rebellion than it was in DmC 3 and 4, which if I'm honest removes the need for the angel and demon weapons. The only reason why you had them is for traversal reasons, pulling things to you, pulling yourself to things, gliding, opening doors. Sure, you can use the pulls on enemies to increase your style meter, but because you have angel and demon weapons, you have to use them if you come across an enemy that is either blue or red. Rebellion is useless against them, like it bounces off, which leaves you open. I wouldn't mind this too much if the demon weapon wasn't so slow. Sometimes you do get hit when you do the combos with a demon weapon. You have to mix in the combos from other weapons in order to make the demon weapon properly useful. So your triple S rank, if you get hit once, can go straight down to a B and you feel like shit, especially seeing as how easy it is just to get the triple S rank. Only times when I've actually had no problem using the demon weapon, and only the demon weapon, is when I have the devil trigger active. Which brings us to the devil trigger. It has gone through an interesting change, the most obvious being everything becomes red and white, which I don't care too much about. What I do care about is why does it have to throw enemies up in the air? You can pull them down to the ground, but it's clear the devil trigger is meant to be used as a mid-air combo break them apart sort of thing, because the enemies hit the ground, they go back to normal speed and get a free hit in. Because this massive flaw, I only use it to deal huge amounts of damage to bosses, but even that has its issues. When you start a mission, your devil gauge will always be empty, and because there are literal boss missions, you will always start your fights with them with nothing, and depending on how good you are at the game, you'll end the fight with barely going past the gauge that lets you activate devil trigger, beating the whole purpose of using it, seeing as when using it against non-boss enemies, it's a pain, as well as a hassle, and you barely get to use it on bosses because you always have no devil gauge. You could use an item to fill the gauge, but the game will point out that you used an item during the mission, lowering your overall score. Previous DmC games have done that too, but they've at least let you keep your devil gauge filled to how it was in the mission before. I know this is a reboot, but this literally feels like a step back. What's not a step back though is the upgrade system. Rather than using red orbs or proud souls as the older games had you do to unlock new skills, you kill enough enemies and they fill up a gauge that I like to refer to as the upgrade gauge. Once it's filled, you get 1 skill point. Your score at the end of the mission also fills it up, so performing perfectly is encouraged. It's clear that Ninja Theory realized it was too easy, so they added a bunch of skills and then padded the fuck out of them with rank 2 or 3 versions of the same skill, which is a cheap way to do things. This sort of thing isn't new to these sort of games, but it is new to DmC. Well, maybe not 4. But they didn't let you unlock new skills so you can keep using the same basic combos to mow down hordes of demons. No, they let you unlock them so you can deal more damage and look more stylish by mixing it up. It just feels like a lost opportunity because they have some pretty cool animations. The secret missions are still in the game, which is good. Secret missions were used in the past to test a player's skill, and completing them gives you the blue orb fragments. Collect 4 of them and your health pool goes up by a certain amount. Although, I'm not a fan of how you access them. In previous titles, you just had to find them. In this, you have to find both a key and the door. And sometimes the keys that you need aren't provided in those missions. So if you need a copper key and you find a copper door, cool. That's good. But if you find a copper key and you can't find a copper door in that mission because there isn't one, you have to wait until a later mission just to do that one. It's a minor nitpick, but because I had to play through it all, I didn't want to revisit the same missions because some of them are just so fucking boring. And to be frank, this didn't make me want to explore the game. It just made me want to stick with the main road, main story, and that's it. And because of how the upgrades are handled through the upgrade gauge, and also the fact that you only use the red orbs for items, and because the game isn't that hard, you don't use them on, say, the health pickups. So instead you use them on something like the blue orbs, or the purple orbs, which increase the maximum capacity of your devil gauge. There is literally no point to do the secret missions other than to just check them out. So yeah, needless to say, I have a lot of issues with this game, but they all stem with the title and which franchise it belongs to. Most of these issues have been fixed with the definitive editions, which are available for Xbox One and PS4, but PC never received these changes, so we have to deal with Rebellion bouncing off enemies and the shitty style system that is tied to overall damage done. I cannot recommend this game to people who want to play Devil May Cry because it's too far apart from what makes it Devil May Cry. If you do, however, want to play something like DmC, then get Devil May Cry 3. There are multiple ways of getting it, the latest being the HD collection that's finally out on PC, and also this generation of consoles. Probably the next generation. It's Capcom, they do this sort of stuff all the time. I know it sounds like I'm shitting on a game that came out 5 years ago, but there is relevance to it, and after finally playing it, I now know why, and thank Capcom for not making a Reboot Part 2. Maybe this time Nero will be a fully developed character.
Go blow yourself.